Since 1765, the people of Boston had been protesting against British taxation, first against the Stamp Act and then in 1767 against the Townsend's duties.
These acts were laws that placed indirect taxes on 5 British goods: paper, paint, glass, lead, and tea. The purpose of these acts were to raise revenue for Britain and maintain the army in North America.
Colonists believed the duties were another attempt by Parliament to tax them without their consent and representation. Colonists protested by agreeing to a boycott. Public boycotts were created to decrease the consumption of British imports and other goods in the colonies. The Daughters of Liberty and the Non-Consumption Agreements were 2 colonial movements created in response to British taxation. The Daughters of Liberty helped colonies not only by lessening the need for imported British textiles, but also by coming up with new ways to help support the colonists' boycott of other British goods. The Non-Consumption Agreements were protests organized by American colonists in opposition to new import duties. However, the situation worsened when the government ordered troops to that city to enforce the legislation. These tensions grew between the troops and the citizens of Boston, reaching an apex.
An additional factor that increased the tension was after a custom employee killed 11-year-old Christopher Suter in February 1770. Although British soldiers weren't involved, resentment against occupation escalated in the days following.
The Boston Massacre was the killing of 5 colonists by British regulars on March 5, 1770. This was known as Incident on King Street. It was a fight amongst Patriot mob throwing snowballs, sticks, and stones, and British soldiers. Soldiers fired, killing 3 people and killing 2 others. A black sailor named Crispus Attucks, a rope maker named Samuel Gray, and a mariner named James Caldwell. They also injured 6 others. British officer in charge, Captain Thomas Preston, was later arrested and charged for manslaughter. Along with 8 of his men, they were all acquitted.
People were understandably enraged by the actions of the British soldiers in the Boston Massacre. The Sons of Liberty heavily propagated what the soldiers did to further their regime against the British government. It's said that about 15,000 people marched behind the coffins of the victims to their graves. The backlash that the British government faced as a result of the Boston Massacre spurred the composition of the Intolerable Acts of 1774. First act was the Boston Port Act, which said that the Boston port was closed until colonials paid back all of the tea that they had thrown into the harbor. Second was the Massachusetts Government Act, which stated that the Massachusetts governor would be appointed by the king and no longer through an election. Any offices under the governor would then be appointed by the royal governor and also not through an election. The enforcement of the Intolerable Acts spurred the first meeting and the official creation of the Continental Congress. Their first big decision was that if the Intolerable Acts were not repealed within 1 year of their meeting, all British goods would be boycotted. The Boston Massacre is one of the biggest factors into the composition of the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights, stating that all citizens have the right to bear arms. Their thinking was that if colonials were able to carry firearms on them, and they were able to defend themselves, something like the Boston Massacre could not occur again.